Welcome to the very first episode of the Iced Tea Podcast. I'm your host, Meghan Lamontagne, and this podcast is for you, the Caniacs, the fans. We are spilling the tea both on and off the ice. And without further ado, my first guest on the Iced Tea Podcast, Cam Ward. Iced Tea is a production of Mix 101.5 and presented by Lane & Associates Family Dentistry, where every patient is treated like family. Hurricane Hall of Famer, Stanley Cup winning goaltender as a rookie, Cam Ward. Welcome to the Iced Tea Podcast.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
So this podcast is for the fans who love the team and have loved the team. So I can't believe it's been about 20 years, but let's get in that time machine and go back to 20 years ago, that Game 7 when you won the Stanley Cup as a rookie. What were those moments like?
Wow. It is hard to believe it's already been 20 years, right? A lot of former players were here for Eric Staal night, and we all kind of talked like we got to meet all together again next year to celebrate 20 years. It makes me feel a little bit old, but when I think about my rookie season, as a kid, 21 years old, just happy to be in the NHL, living a childhood dream. That's, as a Canadian hockey player growing up, that's what we love to do. I started skating when I was 3 years old. I was in organized hockey, probably when 5, 6 years old. And, as a kid, that's your ultimate dream, is to play in the NHL. And as we grow up and you're playing street hockey and playing in the outdoor rinks, you always kind of put yourself in, what if I was in a Game 7 in the Stanley Cup Finals? And here I was with the opportunity to do it in my rookie year, and was literally a dream come true, and playing against my home team,
That's right.
The Edmonton Oilers. So things couldn't have happened any smoother. I was very fortunate to be able to be put in a situation like that where I could take advantage of the opportunity. I think that the sport itself is about opportunities and taking advantage of them, and that was mine, and I certainly wanted to take advantage of it.
Oh my goodness. I just can't imagine just those final moments. You're in the crease, you're in between the pipes, the countdown goes, and then it just clicks, and you're like, oh my gosh, we just won this. Was there confetti? Like, did the confetti fall on the ice? Like, it was there?
That's a good question. I know there was a lot of people on the ice. There wasn't a whole lot of ice to skate around because, that was one of the things with Coach Laviolette. He wanted everybody involved, family, friends. So everybody was on the ice afterwards. And to be quite honest, it was a bit of a blur.
Oh, I can imagine.
You're trying to find your family, and, because I think about, not only the moment for me to raise the Stanley Cup, I think about my parents, I think about my family, my girlfriend, which is now my wife, all the people that kind of helped me get to that moment. And because you can't do it by yourself. And, when I hoisted the Stanley Cup, Joseph Vacicek was the one that handed it to me. Obviously terrible what happened to Joseph, but I'll forever have that memory of him handing it to me. And you just... extremely thankful to a lot of people, and especially that team. We were very tight knit. We were kind of like almost like a pack of wolves. Like, we just everybody wanted to play for one another, and that's what we preached. And when I was sitting in the locker room, and you have a guy like, to my left was Ray Whitney, and Rod Brindamore, Glenn Wesley to my right. These guys had played their whole career waiting for the opportunity to win the Stanley Cup. And here I am, 21 years old, rookie, just, excited to be there. And in a sense, that almost made me play better, because I could just go out there and do my thing, and didn't have the weight on my shoulders, so to speak. And I always find, just when you go out there and have some fun, good things happen. And, very, very fortunate.
And that position is not easy. And so as a rookie, and you continued to play for many years. So once you reach the creme de la creme,
we
like
set the bar
pivotal,
high, didn't we?
You set the bar really high. So how did you, was that motivation getting through your other years, or was it kind of like if I never do this again, that's okay? You wanted to, obviously, but how do you keep going after you reach the top in your first year?
Well, that's a good point. I mean, it definitely is a challenge.
Yeah.
You definitely set the bar very high in your rookie year, and I guess the rest, if in hindsight, is a disappointment if you don't go back. I will say that you soon realize how difficult it is to get back in that situation. I was only fortunate to be in the playoffs one other time, and we came close and had a really good run when we did my second opportunity. But that was it. I played 14 years in the NHL and gone to the playoffs twice, and that's why you can never take it for granted.
Right.
And I tell a lot of people I was so young, and even my day with the Stanley Cup, my dad planned the whole day, just because I didn't really want to. I'm not a guy that wants to bring a lot of attention on myself, and I was so young, and in hindsight, I would have appreciated a lot more if I would have done it again. Not that I didn't appreciate it when we won in 2006, but just then you realize throughout the rest of your career how difficult it was to get back.
Right.
And I would have appreciated it a lot more if I were to been lucky enough to do it another time.
So every single player gets a day with the Stanley Cup. That is, first of all, I mean, very well deserved and amazing. But what did you do with your day exactly? So you said your dad planned it.
Yeah.
What was the day like?
Yeah, so I took it back to my home arena in Sherwood Park, Alberta, which is just outside of Edmonton. And so it's kind of funny. So I wanted to give back to the fans and have an opportunity for fans to come and take pictures. But a lot of these fans that were coming to see me were wearing Edmonton Oilers jerseys because it's just outside, So they're a little bit torn. They want a picture with the Stanley Cup, but they're also upset at me for that we beat the Edmonton Oilers. So it was kind of funny, but it's just an opportunity to give back to the community that helped me get to where I was, and then. From there, I took it to my grandma's place where she was living. I had lost my grandpa a few years earlier, or a year or two earlier, and he was my biggest fan. And so we put the cup on his seat and, had a little moment there, and then took it to a golf club in just outside of Sherwood Park and invited a ton of people and just had a lot of fun and drank a lot of stuff out of the Stanley Cup.
and that's what I wanted to ask you too.
Yeah.
You were, obviously there were so many sentimental moments that day, but then of course you always you have to drink something out of it, right? Were there all sorts of beverages?
Yeah,
in the Stanley
I think there was a strong menu of all sorts of different things that you could put on there.
Naturally, I feel like that's how you have to do it out of the Stanley Cup. When you got it, which player did you get it from, and was it sticky?
That's a good question. I might have got it after maybe Mike Commodore, so who knows what the heck happened with Mike Commodore. He actually came for my night, so he was there. I think he was doing the tour with the Stanley Cup.
Okay.
He was going to every teammate's party. So, yeah, I always say, if that Stanley Cup could tell stories, it would have a ton.
If you could be
stories.
A fly in the Stanley Cup, just on the wall, that's
but
wild.
It's got to be, it's the best trophy in sports, and it's just seeing your name engraved on the Stanley Cup. Nobody can take that away from you, and it's pretty special to be able to. To say you are on the Stanley Cup.
When you first saw your name on the Stanley Cup, what was that moment like for you? I'm sure so many emotions.
Yeah, just like I said, you can't take that away.
Right. Your name is forever engraved.
On the Stanley Cup, and that's you see all the past history and knowing the other names that are on there. You're pretty blessed and fortunate to be able to say that you're on it. That's
incredible. Now, do you? Did you feel the need to wipe the inside before you handed it off to another player? Or you were this was fun.
Yeah. Well, you got to keep in mind that the Stanley Cup travels with its own carrier. So
so the carrier,
and he's got white gloves on, and he's doing everything. And so I felt pretty confident that it had been sanitized before.
Perfect. We love that. We love that. Is it because of the superstition that goes along with it? I don't know. A lot of people haven't had the opportunity. They've gotten pictures next to it. Is it heavy?
Yeah, without the adrenaline, it is heavy. But when you raise it as a champion, you're like, wow, this is light. And then other moments you're like, whoa, I must have been pretty fired up when I lifted it.
Yeah.
Because it is a little bit heavy. And it's funny because, that is the thing with the Stanley Cup for people that do play the sport. They don't want to touch it or anything like that because you think it jinxes you. And I remember having opportunities to take pictures with the Stanley Cup when I was playing. Growing up and never touched it or anything like that.
So we can say it's true that
maybe
that superstition is true.
Yeah.
It worked for you.
Worked for me.
So you're talking about your team and the guys in the locker room and who was to your left and who was to your right. Who would you say you gelled with the best off the ice?
Well, at that time, my roommate was Chad LaRose. So I have a lot of funny moments with Chad LaRose. I can remember being in the hotel room in Edmonton, and we're literally two kids. It was almost like we're trying to pinch each other and being like, can you believe that we're 2 wins away from winning the Stanley Cup?
Yeah.
And just kind of having that silly, goofy kind of moment with him. But he's the guy that's lucky to play with a lot of funny people in my career. He's got to be one of the funniest guys I know. And, so him and I clicked. Eric Staal, obviously we're the similar age and kind of we're going through it together. Andrew Ladd, another guy. So yeah, we had a veteran-led team, we had a good young core too that were kind of up and coming. And, and when I say we're going to be celebrating that, the 20-year anniversary, you always remember who you won it with, and you kind of have that special bond together. And so we saw that, at Eric Stahl's, retirement night, a lot of them coming back, and it was great to see those people.
When y'all hit the ice together again for the alumni game, is it like, whoo, how did we do this so long ago? Were you a little bit sore?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I'm the young guy, right? And so I'm 40, I'll be 41 at the end of this month, and I know how my body feels, and it didn't like it. That's hence why I didn't want to throw the pads on and be the goalie. I let Georgie do that because he does it on a regular basis now. But my knees and back don't like doing that anymore. So,
well, you would never know. You guys did a great job. It was very fun. It's always fun to watch you get back out there. Do you see each other often, or only kind of when moments like that happen?
Well, there's a lot of former alumni that live in Raleigh.
Yeah.
So, we typically will skate, once a week. Aaron Ward coordinates the skates locally here for us to be able to see each other. And so it's nice, to be able to have some other, former players in the area and be able to keep in touch.
That's awesome. That is awesome. Iced Tea is presented by Lane & Associates Family Dentistry. When you walk into a Lane office, it is warm, it is welcoming, it is stress-free, and it's an environment for the whole family. So visit lanedds.com to find a location near you. Now, you're talking about being in the hotel room with Chad and you were 2 games away. When you woke up on game 7, were there immense nerves, or was it just like, let's go? Like, I am ready for this game.
Yeah, I think, there's obviously that nervous excitement.
Yeah.
But even just like hearing you kind of bring it up gives me goosebumps even now. And so that's what ultimately it does. That's why we play the game, is to be in situations like that. Maybe I'll dive back to when I was in Edmonton, because one of the first things that I did when we played game 3, I went out for pregame skate, and the first thing I did was I looked to my left and I picked out the 2 seats that my dad was lucky enough to have season tickets through his company to take me to Oiler games. Oh, wow. And it was literally 2 years prior that I was in those seats with my dad watching the Carolina Hurricanes play the Edmonton Oilers. And so it was kind of like a surreal moment for me to be like, here I am, now starting in the Stanley Cup Finals, when 2 years prior I was literally in the seats in the stands watching the Oilers play. And so that's how quickly, things changed. And, to be able to come back and play in Game 7 in Raleigh, I mean, that's why you play for home ice advantage. Yeah. And it really put, the organization on the map as far as a fan base and the atmosphere that we created. No, I say we, the fans created.
No, it started. It started then.
The tailgating and so as a player, you're pulling into the rink and seeing the tailgating. It gets you so excited. And as a goaltender, you kind of have to harness that excitement, right? Because I can't be going too crazy or anything like that. You got to be calm and level-headed, and things just aligned and did really well, and fortunate to be able to win the game. And I can only imagine to get to that point and not win. And so I'm so thankful that we did win.
And I just thank you so much for sharing this with me, because I want to live this moment like through you, because I am a new fan, and a lot of people listening and watching this podcast are new fans, because so many people are moving here, and I moved here 5 years ago and owe so much to this team, and I know the legacy of y'all, and I wasn't even here in 2006. So thank you for sharing that with me and all the fans that maybe weren't here in 2006, and knowing that we can still very much be a part of that. And because you are still so involved, and we just appreciate that so much. But yes, okay, so we're talking about being a goaltender, talking about being level-headed. And whenever I watch Freddie, Piotr, any goaltender, I feel, that is just such an intense position, because let's face it, at the end of the day, if you win the game, you might be one of the most celebrated players. And if you lose the game, quite frankly, especially on social media, you might be one of the most hated players. So how do you deal with that, the outside noise?
Well, I never was on social media back then, so that that probably helped. Because you got to be able to block out that noise. Yeah. And I think our guys that you brought up Anderson, he's such a low key personality. I've gotten the opportunity to meet both guys, and they couldn't be polar opposites.
I know. I feel like Piotr is just this wild, feral
but that's what makes them great, And so I try to be calm and just control what you can't control. And as I'm a person that cares deeply about how I do, and I care about other people's opinion. So if I were to be listening to every feedback or every critic, it's the one person that maybe said something bad about me, it would bother me. Because that's just my nature. So I think it's just important to keep your distance from that, and just to remember that there's only so much you can do, and there's so much you can control. It's a team sport, and my thing was just give the team a chance to win as much as I can. And some nights you did, and sometimes you didn't. Yeah. And that's I was lucky enough to have a strong support cast. My wife Cody, and obviously now I have two kids in Nolan and Nyla. So to be able to come home and they love you no matter what, whether you stop 30, 40 pucks and let in 6 goals, it's great to have a support crew for the hard times.
And I'm sure it's so frustrating too, because I'll look at some of these comments and I'm like, has this person ever been in a goalie mask and goalie equipment and done it themselves? And what is your line of vision? Because when you're all with that much equipment on, you've got your mask on, how much is it visual and how much of it is just feeling and being comfortable?
Well, it's a combination of everything, but that's a good point. I tell a lot of people, unless you've looked through the cage of a goaltender, you really don't really understand. No. And I've said that to, management, and, because there's that element to it. Yeah. And so there's a lot of chaos. There's a lot of screens. I remember my first exhibition game I played in Atlanta, and it was kind of my intro to the NHL. And what I try to do is put myself in the best position to get hit by the puck, and that's rely on your positioning. Mm-hmm. And there was a case where I think it was Danny Heatley that came down the wing and shot through the legs of our D-man, and I didn't even see it. It just literally hit me off the shoulder. And that was kind of like my first intro to being like, wow, like you're not going to see it. You almost can't even react to it, but you got to put yourself in the best position to get hit. And so I tried to rely positionally on my game. I know it wasn't always great, but that's what you try to do. And I think, Freddie, when you look at his style of play, it's very quiet, very controlled, smooth, almost like he's in a rocking chair. And then we got Cooch, who's, like a wild dog out there at times. But that's what makes him great. I love how aggressive he is and how sharp he is. Yeah. And he wants it. And so maybe sometimes, we want to dial it back, have a little bit more of a quiet sharpness, but at the same time, that's what make those two goaltenders great. Let them do their thing.
They're fantastic. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that point of view, because that's something that so many of us will never get to experience. We will never get to experience behind the mask. So that is awesome. So now I want to talk about baby Cam, and you were talking about your dad. And so is he the one that got you into playing hockey when you were so young?
Yeah, definitely. My dad was a goaltender at Graceland College. I don't even think they have a hockey program anymore. So it's not like he played professionally or anything like that. But he was my role model, obviously growing up and trying to wanted to be like him. But at an early age, I think it's important for even for goaltenders now to start out by skating. Skating is such a huge part of the position, and I didn't start playing full-time goaltending until I was maybe 12, 13. So I enjoyed the days where I could be a player and shoot, and was a pretty good player. But I knew that I always wanted to be the last line of defense and make the big save when it mattered the most. And it just, the mental side of the position really is what drawed me into being a goaltender. Yeah. And fortunately, it worked out. I got to play my junior hockey for the Red Deer Rebels. Brent Sutter was the GM and coach and owner of that team. So a lot of history with that Sutter name. And it was about an hour and a half away from Edmonton. Okay. So it was the closest team that I could actually play for in the Western Hockey League. So it was easy for my parents to come down and drive and watch games and be able to support me, moving away to another family in Red Deer. We call them billet families.
Yes.
So I moved away when I was 17 to a great billet family that made it easier transition for me. And the focus all along was to get noticed, to get drafted to the NHL. And 2002 was my draft year in Toronto, and was happy the Hurricanes called my name.
That's dreams do come true, and that's just not without hard work and dedication, which is clearly everything that you did, and that is amazing. I was actually looking at your history, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I had a moment. No one else will remotely understand this, but you played in the AHL a year before, and you were in Lowell, Massachusetts.
Yeah.
Lowell is my name. I grew up right there.
Wow.
I'm from New Hampshire.
Okay, yeah,
and
that's
so
right.
I was like, oh my gosh, Cam lived in Lowell, Massachusetts. How crazy is that? Yeah.
Yeah, so that was my intro to moving to the U.S.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
The first thing they told me to do was make sure you lock your doors. And I said, where are we going?
Lowell's no joke. Lowell is not great, but thankfully the town I grew up in New Hampshire was very safe. But just hop, skip, and jump over that borderline. You're like, woof, Lowell's a little
we enjoyed
scary.
Going down to Boston. It was kind of nice to be able to go down there. And I always, a funny story, I always joke about, Cody, my wife, when she came and visited. She probably won't like that I share this story, but, because I that was my intro to the United States. And so she came down and visited for my birthday one year, and she did me a treat, and she got me a limo. So we rented a limo. And this, keep in mind, we're just kids and have no idea. And guess the restaurant that she took us to was to the Cheesecake Factory. And I was like, I said, you know what? I've made it. I'm going in a limo to the Cheesecake Factory. And so that's our kind of our funny story. And it's just living the dream at the time.
How sweet is that? Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah. There's nothing like a limo in the Cheesecake Factory.
No knock on the Cheesecake Factory, but that was, to us, that was the spot. I can't believe it.
I love that. You are a wonderful dad, a wonderful husband. I want to get into that family life because you were talking about how important it is to have that support when you come home. I didn't realize that you and Cody were high school sweethearts.
Yeah. So when I moved to Red Deer to play for the Rebels, we met in high school. And, the story is that she passed me a note to go out to a movie. And this is actually when I was 16 and I was trying out for the Red Deer Rebels. And she said, would you like to go to a movie? And I said, well, of course, yeah. I mean, rock on. That'd be awesome. And so I think it was the next day I got cut from the Red Deer Rebels and moved back to Sherwood Park. And so I never spoke to her. And then so we had a mutual friend because she played volleyball. And must have had a tournament with my friend, and she's like, have you talked to Cam and be able to, that's how we swapped numbers and made the team the next year when I was 17 and just been together ever since. Yeah.
So, okay. Yeah. And that, that is love, because if there were social media, then you would have been able to like follow each other, get in touch. But the fact that life just brought you back together. Oh,
it was old school.
Gosh.
But
it's
so already, now I'm on the spot and can do math. 18 years. Yeah.
18 years.
So
that's wonderful. And you've got 2, I was going to say little ones, but
they're not so little anymore. No, Nolan's 14 and Nyla is 12. I was kind of joking with you prior to this. It should maybe be flip-flopped. I think Nyla should be 14 or she acts like she's 14 and Nolan acts kind of more like 12. So, 2 beautiful kids, very, very, very lucky, and it's been fun watching them grow.
That age is not easy. Now, has Nyla showed interest in hockey? Because Nolan plays hockey.
Nolan he only played for 2 years.
Okay.
So he played my last year in Carolina and then played in my last year in Chicago. And the joke was like, basically when I retired, he said he retired, and that's okay, Sure, I was like, that's, if he doesn't want to play, he doesn't want to play. I'm not going to force that on him. He absolutely loves the game of hockey, and I kind of say that he's almost the kid that just, he'd rather be like Eric Tulsky than be, Svechnikov, right?
Yes.
Like he's much more into the stats and analytics side of it. And we play fantasy hockey together, and he's got that mind for that side of the game of hockey. But
that's wonderful.
But yeah, it's a lot of fun taking him to the home games.
Now, I had read that when Nolan was born, I mean, man, what a fighter he is, born into this world, having to face so much adversity. But I would love for you to talk a little bit more about his journey, and because he was born deaf, and he had a life-changing surgery, getting a cochlear implant. What exactly is that? Yeah,
so like you mentioned, I mean, when he was born, he failed his newborn hearing test, and so which is quite normal. So that just, what that means is you just do a follow-up test, and my wife can probably, share more in depth of the process, because at the end of the day, when our kids are born, I mean, I was back on the bench that night, and you got to go do your job, and so I give a ton of credit to Cody for everything that she did for our kids, and especially in Nolan's case when he was born deaf. And we got his first cochlear implant when he was 9 months old. So that would have been the first time that he had heard any sort of sound. And then we opted to do his second one when he was 5. And so to the normal person, if you were to see him, you wouldn't know anything different in his speech. And a lot of that is a lot of credit to, again, Cody and our speech therapist, to work from the ground up and get him to, starts with the ba ba boo boo and work your way up. But it's been a real challenge for him, but it makes him who he is, and he's super smart. And I almost think that, we think that maybe that just plays a role, and like he's got to focus so much harder to be able to hear and take in all the sounds that he's getting. So he's just dialed in, but it can tire him out pretty good. And, he has his other challenges, but so does a lot of kids have other challenges. And I'm just so proud of him and who he is as a person and as a 14-year-old. And I can't wait to see the future for him, because he's one smart kid, and he did not get that from me. I can guarantee you that.
Listen, something he did get from you is when you said he's dialed in. Now, maybe he might not be goaltender, but he has to be dialed in, and he certainly gets that from Dad, and that does come from you. Yes.
Thanks.
And I just can't imagine. So you also shared in one of the articles that I was reading that you got the call about this, I believe it from Cody, and you were on the road, and you didn't decide to share this until later. So I can't even imagine having to play every night and having to deal with this behind closed doors. What was that like?
Yeah, it's certainly not easy. So I did that article for the Players Tribune. It's on the bravest guy I know, which would be obviously Nolan. But it's you deal with adversity and you just kind of have to, go along. I can remember my first game after he was born, which was obviously early, and we didn't know kind of the roller coaster that we were going to be on, but it was in Boston, and I was just, living the high life. And I the way that game went, I got a shuttle in my first game post Nolan being born.
See, the dads, they always bring it after their babies are born.
Because you'll always remember that was my first game that I played after my son was born. But yeah, I mean, it presents challenges, and again, you just, with hearing loss, then you realize how fortunate you are to have UNC in your back corner.
Yeah.
And so now we're feeling, wow, this is happening to us, but we are lucky and fortunate to be in North Carolina and have the medical help that we need in our backyard. And so that was very helpful. And, Nolan wouldn't be where he is today if it wasn't for the help of all the doctors and speech therapists that have helped him, get to where he is.
That's wonderful. What was it like hearing his first words?
Oh, yeah, it'll make you tear up. I'm not a very emotional guy, but even just hearing, you bringing that up it brings back a lot of memories. There's nothing you can replace. All you want for your kid is to hear you tell them you love them, and if not, then you sign and you do that. There's every situation is different. We thought this was the best thing to do for our son Nolan, and knock on wood, it's been great so far.
Oh my goodness. Well, they sound like so much fun and such cherubs. And I can only imagine just being 14 and 12, what you're dealing with in that household in the best way. Yeah. But what made y'all stay here in Raleigh? We love that you're here in Raleigh, but.
Yeah, it definitely helps that you played 13 years here. Yeah. So you establish a lot of, good relationships, a lot of friends that we've made, and you can't help but enjoy the weather. It did kind of make me feel like I was back in Canada here not too long ago with the snow. Yeah. And I'm like, wait, I don't like that. I'm soft now. I don't want to deal with that.
How did the kids like it though?
The kids love it. Like my daughter, she was out there almost all day, just loves it. We went back home to Alberta for Christmas a year ago, and they're like, Dad, what are the chances there's going to be snow? I said 100%. We're going back to Alberta. I've never seen a Christmas with no snow, and sure enough, it was the first brown Christmas they've had, and there was literally no snow. So they were so disappointed to not have any snow. So when it does here in Raleigh, it's always a big hit. But I just and they don't have to go to school. School cancels so easily. Like I was like, wait, what? There's a little frost on so we're canceling or shutting down the city. If they only know what we had to do.
I know. Well, I obviously didn't grow up in Canada, but being in New Hampshire, I totally understand it. I thought the same thing. I was like, why is no one at work?
It's great. I guess as a family, you get to enjoy the day.
Snow days are the best, and I'm glad that those two got to experience it. So not only that, rookie Stanley Cup winner, awesome dad, awesome husband. Now let's just add businessman, entrepreneur into the mix. You, with Tim Gleason, have your own vineyard, own your own wine company. I love that you're branding it with your hat, Vineyard 36, which I'm guessing is the combination of your numbers. Is that how you came up with the name? How did wine become a part of your life? Because I love wine, so I'm very excited about this part of the conversation.
Yeah, so early on in my career, we go back to talking about, having a veteran team, and one of the perks of, playing on the road is you're lucky enough to be going to nice steakhouses, nice dinner spots. And I soon found out that a lot of guys like to enjoy a glass of wine at their dinner. And so I never obviously partaked earlier. I was a young kid, and but then you kind of go along, and I was putting two and two together that whether I was partaking or not, my share on the bill was, was going on. So I'm like, well, hey, so eventually I'm like, well, I guess I'm kind of paying for it already. So I'll give it a try. And then what I found is that I really enjoyed Napa Valley Cabernet. And so it just really piqued my interest. And from there, I became a collector. I enjoy, the hunt to find the hard to get bottles and collecting and being able to share them with friends. I think that's what gravitated me to wine itself is, just being able to share it and socialize with people and, reminisce on the good times and the good memories and create new memories over a glass or two of wine. And so in doing that, I met my other business partner, Jason Ernest. He had a previous winery, which I had met through collecting, and we just clicked immediately and kept in contact, became good friends. And once he got out of his previous winery, a few years later, he approached me and said, "Hey, would you want to try to give this a shot?" And so I said, "Yeah, let's do it." And so instead of diving head first, I'm not that kind of guy. We started very small. I basically almost gave him like a tryout and being like, what am I getting myself into? And it just blew me away. His knowledge is unbelievable, and the juice was fantastic. So that's how we formed Vineyard 36. And I said, if I want to bring in a partner, I want to bring in my best friend, Tim Gleason. And so, like you mentioned, number 30 and number 6 created Vineyard 36, and it's been a fun journey. It's a challenge, but at the end of the day, we're making some really good juice down in the valley, and I get excited every time I hear feedback of people enjoying our wine.
So I before I moved here, not in Northern California, but I did live in California for 10 years, and that's where my love for wine developed, because there's nothing like the California vineyards. Do you travel to Napa frequently?
Yeah, I wish it was closer.
I know.
So I go typically once a year. That's it. But for example, last night we had a Zoom call with everything's Zoom now.
Yeah.
With our winemaker Keith Emerson, and he's going to be shipping me some samples here, so we just taste them in my cellar, and then that's the luxury now, is that he can just ship it off to me and I could deal with it here. But if it was closer, I'd be there a lot more often, and I don't know if that would be a good thing, because you'd probably spend too much money and drink too much wine. But if you're looking for a good bottle or a good glass of wine, you can enjoy it now watching Cheering on the Canes.
Yes, and if it wasn't 11 a.m., we'd be, hey, listen, we could, whatever. It's 5 o'clock somewhere, right?
A glass of wine, yeah.
So one of the bottles, though, is after the Stanley Cup, correct? It kind of mimics the Stanley Cup?
It's the 5 bands. And so a lot of people are like, what's the 5 bands? Well, the 5 bands is the 5-band barrel of the Stanley Cup. That's the base of the Stanley Cup. That shows the past champions that are engraved. And so if you look at an image of our bottle, it basically looks like the Stanley Cup. And so one of the cool traditions for us at Vineyard 36 is, no matter what team wins, we've been doing this for a long time now. We'll ship wine to some of the champion players, and they'll pour it in the Stanley Cup.
That's
so
awesome.
It's the new tradition. I know the Stanley Cup holder does not like wine going into the Stanley Cup.
It does stain a little bit, but
it does stain a little
fine.
bit. There's probably been worse things that have been in there.
I'm sure.
So we kind of the last person we had, Ekblad had it, and he said, well, they're giving me grief about pouring it in there. So he put a bowl inside of it for the photo. And so, obviously the dream for us is we'll get some Hurricane players to be able to pour it into. So knock on wood that happens.
I am very excited to get my hands on some of this wine. I, too, am a wine lover. Is it all reds? We love the red. Yeah. No, reds, I love that. Red, only red. We are here for it. Okay, well, last segment, I haven't even looked at my cards at all, Kim. This is how just fantastic you are. I just haven't even had to look down. Yeah. Last segment, fun, called Spill the Tea, just kind of rapid fire. First question, do you like having your birthday on Leap Day? February 29th?
Yeah.
Oh, so how many birthdays have you actually, like real birthdays, have you had in your life?
Well, come on, you should know that.
I'm really bad at math.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. Because I get a kick out of this, because like people are like, well, if I'm 40, they're thinking like, well, how old are you? I'm like, well, it's every 4 years.
Every 4 years.
So I'm 10 years old.
10 years old.
Yeah. So my daughter gets a huge kick out of it. I mean, she thinks she's old. Yeah. If I start acting like a kid or goofing around, she's like, well, look at him. He's 10 years old, So I enjoy it. Yeah. It's unique. It's different. It's funny. The people that you meet, like Sanguinetti, a former teammate, He's a leap year baby, and you think how rare it is. And then here I had a teammate that was born on a leap year too. So
that's been. I'm sure there's like some magic that happens on being born on a day like that.
Well, if it only comes every 4 years, we try to make it a big deal.
Yeah.
But typically, I would celebrate it, February 28th, and try to keep it in the same month, I guess.
Yeah.
So yeah,
and happy early birthday, by the way. Wait, are we in a leap?
No, I'll be 41. Yeah, so I'll be 10 and a quarter.
10 and a quarter. Yeah. All right. Well, we'll just have to wait then to have that celebration, but we'll have plenty of wine to do it.
Yes.
Okay, so when you watch these players now, and I know it's hard to be biased, but who are you most excited to see of our current team?
Ooh, that's a tough question because, it's a good thing that it's a tough question because there's a lot of choices that you could have. I like Jarvis. I think he's, just the way that he can snap the puck, and he's got that, he's got that grit to him, and like he's not afraid. A lot of people knock size, but he doesn't play undersized. He plays tough, and he seems to enjoy, being a pro hockey player. He just plays for the love of the game and can be a difference maker. I think he could be a pivotal playoff performer. And so I get excited about him if I had to name one. That's a good one. I like that you picked Jarvie. I just feel like he's just, everyone always talks about like how funny he is and how outgoing he is. And obviously on the ice, he's unstoppable. What was your other favorite city to travel to on the road? Did you have like a favorite stop? I had a couple, I guess. Montreal for the hockey aspect of it. It brings me back to when I started in the playoffs my rookie year in Montreal at the Bell Center. Talk about like a great atmosphere, 22,000 fans that are crazy. But as far as traveling, I loved Nashville. Was cool. I love live music. And so it's kind of funny when you play in the league. As long as I played, you see the change in a city as you play along. And Nashville used to be kind of like a under the radar. You could go there and listen to music. Now, so I told my wife, I was like, I love Nashville. And so she had never been and went there not too long ago. And now it's like the Bachelorette capital of the world, like more so than Vegas. And now it's just parties and drunk people. And she's like, this is what you liked? And I'm like, well, no, it wasn't like that when it first started. But Montreal, anytime you go into like an original six place, like Chicago, playing in Madison Square Garden is special for a player. So those are naming a few. Awesome. And if you can, last but not least, can you tell us one crazy road story? Just one crazy story. You put me on the spot there. I know. There's probably so many. Everybody likes to talk about the story of me in Atlanta. It's probably been replayed. I know they did it for my Hall of Fame night, and I think Eric even talked about it, I think, on his retirement night. It's a story of, I was injured and so I had been out for a little bit, and when I was injured, Eric Staal and Chad LaRose were roommates, and my roommate is Chad LaRose. And so when I came back from injury, we checked into the hotel. It was the Ritz in Atlanta, and Rosie and I got all giddy and like, oh, we're back. And Eric Staal saw that, and he had to, his roommate was Eric Cole. And so they kind of like, probably maybe we shouldn't have been acting so excited, that we're back and kicking out Eric. And so we were just checking into our hotel room. I put my bags down into the closet. Next thing you know, we get a knock on the door, and I open the door, and a flood of water, we call them leaners, and flooded our whole entire room. And nobody's at the door, but we obviously now know who it was, and in that situation they were the hallway across. So I'll speed it up. We go to Chad and I go out for dinner, and we're like, how are we going to get these guys back? And so we come up with this idea. Is like, when I get back to the hotel, I'll go pretend I'm Eric Cole or Eric Staal. I can't remember which one I pretended I was, and I know the room number. It's right across the hall. And so I went to the front desk and I said, hey, I locked my key in my room. Can I get a can I get a spare key? And they're like, well, where's your ID? And I said, well, I left my wallet in the room, but my room is this, my roommate's this, this is my roommate. And sure enough, they gave me a key. And so Rosie and I went into their room and literally took everything. And I just cleaned out their whole entire room and left the bucket that they use for water. And Chad wrote a note on it and said, if you mess with us, you'll be left with nothing. And so that escalated to the point where now we're getting a knock on our door. And it's a bit of an aggressive knock. It's a big security dude. Basically, telling us, to give them their stuff back. And I could see Eric in the back and Eric's acting like he's upset. Like he's mad. Like Cozy doesn't want any jokes on him. That's the New Yorker in him. And he's like, no, now he's mad and I'm kind of getting annoyed that he's making it a scene now with the security guard. Mm-hmm. And so we give it all back. I go to the pregame skate the next day. And then keep in mind, this is my first game coming back from post-injury. And I get... I can hear rumblings around the locker room, and even Brian Tatum, the PR guys, is kind of around, and everybody's talking. And someone finally comes up and said, hey, did you hear that lady at the front desk got fired? They let her go. And I said, what? Like, they're like, yeah, you should be so proud there, Bordeaux, that you got this poor lady fired, And I said, you got to be kidding me. And it literally broke my heart.
Of course.
And I went right up to Brian Tatum at the time and I said, as soon as we get back, you make sure I talk to the manager and we're settling it. We're making it right.
Yeah.
Because I felt like, oh my gosh, I got this poor lady fired. And so it's kind of funny now because I went out for pregame skate. I couldn't save a puck for the life of me. I was so rattled. And so we get back and, get on the bus and sure enough, we get back to the Ritz there and I could see the ladies waiting. And I said, okay, I said, Cozy, you're coming with me. We're settling this. Yeah. He's like, okay, I'll come with you. And then that's when Eric was trying to be like, make him go by himself. And I was like, I looked at Eric and he was my best friend at the time. I was like, since when did you become this kind of guy?
Yeah.
What are you doing?
Yeah.
Because just keep in mind that I'm oblivious and I'm all fired up. And so I start talking to the manager and I said, this is just a big misunderstanding. I completely apologize. And she's like, what? This is how she started. She goes, well, Mr. Ward, here at the Ritz, we do not condone this kind of behavior. And, she shouldn't have given you a key, which she probably shouldn't have given me a key. And so I was like, are you kidding me? This is actually happening? And then all of a sudden, they all started laughing. And so they even had the manager at the hotel in on it.
Oh,
and
my
I was
God.
then it was just a complete relief. But talk about this has turned out to be a long story, but
that's amazing.
It was just like they got us, we got them, and then they got me right back.
The fact that the staff was involved in it.
Oh my gosh, it was terrible. So the next time I played in Atlanta, the manager felt terrible, and she sent up like a meat and cheese board up there, and she felt awful. But it was a good story.
Now that's a story.
Yeah.
Cam, it was everything and more. Thank you so much for sharing your stories and about your family and the Stanley Cup and those moments. And thank you for being on the Ice Tea podcast.
Thanks for having me.
We can cheers.
There we go. Wine next time.
Wine next time.
Cheers. All right.
Hope you enjoyed this episode of Ice Tea, and thank you to Lane & Associates for being our presenting sponsor, and also a big thank you to Cam Ward for being my very first guest. Please like, subscribe, and share with everyone you know, and we'll see you next week.